Hi, I'm Julian and I do research on inner experience. Today I want to talk about the results from people diagnosed with bulimia. So this is using a technique that looks at what's in our minds at very specific points in time. Russell Herbert, somewhere here, conducted these studies over the course of multiple decades with his grad students, and what they found surprised every bulimic participant. So none of them expected the results going in. And it also surprised Russ.
For sure, at the beginning, I thought it was impossible. That when people were telling me stories like that about their inner experience, I thought they were making it up.
And this is Mel. She's a producer and documentary maker. Me, her, and Russ worked together on some past projects, and I brought her on here to ask some hard-hitting questions.
And then I wonder if you've also found similar links with other disorders or conditions. Like, my mind is just listening to this and thinking, I wonder if it's a similar but different thing with people that have very extreme anxiety, and they're all just different forms of a messy mind trying to control or cleanse, as you said.
Let's first get into what this method is. DES, or descriptive experience sampling, uses a beeper to zero in on specific moments in people's everyday lives. So they wear this earpiece as they go about their day. Maybe they're folding laundry, or watching water from a boat, or at karaoke with friends. The beeper delivers random beeps, and it's spaced apart between 1 minute and 1 hour. After each beep, the participant has to jot down whatever was directly in their experience right before the beep. So if you're living your life and then the beep comes, then you turn it off, you want what was caught directly by the beep. And usually that means a moment that's very short. Then we have long interviews about what was in their experience caught by the beep. This is very hard to do. So us researchers have all these theories we have to ditch. A lot of them we don't even know are theories. Participants have all these tricks their minds can play on them, cognitive biases, and we have to work together to get past all of that. So we repeat that process for multiple days. The beeps, noting experience, jotting it down, the interviews, repeat. I want to get to an easy example so you know what I'm talking about. This is from Russ's project, making this method and data open and free to the public. And here's a DES interview with Michael Pollan, a well-known writer. He does not have bulimia, but I want to look at a simple sample to later compare it.
I'm in the kitchen. I have a piece of fish that I've cut up and I'm salting. I have salted. And I am, at the moment of the beep, heading to the refrigerator, plate in hand, when I suddenly realize pepper. I salted and didn't pepper it.
And is it the word pepper?
Yeah, it's the word pepper. I hear the word pepper. It's definitely, I'm not just thinking it.
So this is a pretty simple sample. Michael Pollan is innerly saying pepper. He's not saying it out loud. This is the voice in his head, you could say. But the process of getting this was not simple. So this is already the third day of interviewing, and the interview for just this pepper sample took about 20 minutes. A lot of it was about if Michael Pollan directly experienced his body moving through the kitchen. So this was from later.
Does that mean the bodily portion is not yet in your experience? In my experience?
No. I'm in motion. I'm still leaning in the direction of the fridge, I would say. I haven't changed direction yet.
But I accept that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's part of your experience. The body can
No, where I was definitely part of my experience. I mean, I knew exactly where I was at the moment that pepper.
So your left hand is rested on the armrest there, and it has been all the way along. And now that I'm calling your attention to it, you could say, well, I can experience that directly. There's pressure on my ulnar, whatever.
Right.
But I'm guessing that that has not been part of your direct experience for the last 5 minutes.
No, I'd have to interrogate it to bring it into that awareness.
And so that's the distinction that I would be trying to think about the movement. So you're taking steps across the kitchen.
Yeah, they're very automatic.
And maybe
a million times.
It's not that DES is only interested in the mental. It's that Russ sensed Michael Pollan might have a presupposition that he's always experiencing his body. He used the arm in the chair example to illustrate this. So when his attention's on it, now he can feel the chair directly on his arm. But before that, maybe not. The point is not to figure out this pepper sample. Russ's questions are much too leading for that. The point is that on the next days, Michael Pollan will be better prepared to answer all of these questions.
Part of the skill, I think, is being highly dubious, skeptical, or whatever, and convey that that is a positive thing. That Russ really wants to get it right. He's not just telling me I'm full of shit. He's telling me that he doesn't understand it, and he wants us to be able to get it right. To be able to convey that, I think, is fairly high art, because it is confrontational. You got to be able to say, you know, I don't know what you're talking to me about. You got to be able to say that in such a way that people feel positively about that people understand that that's the highest compliment that I can give. For me to say to Mel, I don't understand it, I want to understand it. That's a high compliment to Mel. That's as good as Russ can do.
Now that we've seen a bit about this method, I want to look at a sample from a woman named Jessica. So she was diagnosed with bulimia, meaning cycles of binge eating and purging or vomiting. At the time of sampling, she was a 22 years old university student. And this was from the 5th day of her sampling. So 5 days of beeps, noting experience, jotting it down, the interviews, repeat. And with the help of some lovely actors, I'm going to reenact this and other samples. It can never be exactly what's in people's minds, but it might give you an idea. So let's go ahead.
At this moment, I'm looking at a picture of me and my boyfriend from a recent trip to Chicago. At the same time, I'm innerly seeing, so in my mind, multiple scenes from this trip. There are at least 5, but maybe more. They have borders around them, but they're not actual photographs, more like mental snapshots of places I'd been. At the same time, I'm innerly seeing myself standing close to my boyfriend, next to the sink. This is much clearer than the Chicago scenes. I also feel a separate happy feeling, a volleyball-sized sensation deep in my stomach.
Note that this is all at the very same time. It's not a quick flash, one after the other. It's hard to even show it. I could show them tiled next to each other, but it's not like she sees them next to each other like that. I could show them overlapping, but it's not like she sees them dissolved into each other. She simply just sees them all at once. So Jessica has 8 or more things going on at the same time. We can compare this to the Michael Pollan sample, and the difference is really stark. So he just had one thing.
Pepper.
You could debate, maybe he was feeling his body, but even then, it's still much simpler than Jessica's sample here. When I tell people about this research, they often say, oh yeah, I also have a lot of things at once. And maybe they do, but I think what a lot of people mean is something more like this. Okay, onions in the pan. Oh shit, the laundry's done in 5 minutes. And I have to pick up Jamie from his piano lesson. Just cook later then, or laundry later. Or Tom can pick up Jamie, but Tom's working. Is Tom working today? Or Jamie can take the bus. But what if he gets kidnapped? Or what if the bus crashes? The onions are burning. So if we look at a timeline of experience before a hypothetical beep, there'd be a lot going on. But it wouldn't be all at once in a literal sense. For Jessica, in this sample and others, it's literally all at once, all caught right by the beep. Let's look at experience from another bulimic person. This is Ashley, a 42-year-old operating room nurse. I'll let Russ keep telling it.
And believed about herself the same thing that most people who have bulimia believed about herself, that she was using it to control her weight and control her shape and whatever. And she was a frequent purger, like daily, and hid it from just about everybody. So she fit the model of center of the target woman with bulimia.
This is sample number 19. Ashley was talking to another nurse about a diagnostic procedure she had given a patient.
At the moment of the beep, I was talking to another nurse about a procedure I administered. I was rolling my left hand back and forth, imitating what the patient did during the procedure. I was saying, I think one of his responses was quicker, but this didn't express everything I wanted to. At the same time, I was thinking about 15 thoughts. These didn't have any words to them. If I had to put them in words, though, it would be something like, just try to explain it to her. Don't try and explain it, because she might think I hadn't administered the procedure in accordance with. I had a reason for what I did. Ashley, you're okay. You've just lost the reason you did it. I've got to get back to checking the patient in the next room, and more. At the same time, I had 5 separate feelings, all at the same time. Feeling bad, self-doubt, ambivalence, frustration, time pressure.
So yes, it's a lot at once, and some people might even find it hard to believe. First off, many people don't even believe that you can have thoughts without words. So it's just the thought, it's clear content.
Just try to explain it to her.
If you had to say it in words, those words would fit best, but just the actual thought doesn't have any words to it. People have trouble even imagining this, and one guy had a viral blog post saying it ruined his day. But the thing is, Hurlburt ended up sampling with this guy, and he actually had lots of thoughts that was just the clear thought and no words to it. So it's very common. And in one study Hurlburt and Heavey did with 30 college students, they did DES with all of these students. So they got multiple samples from each one over multiple days. And at the end, they took all of those samples and coded them up and found that 22% were this kind of thinking without words. So unsymbolized thinking, as we call it. So it's a very common type of experience. But once you've accepted that, then 15 of these thoughts all at once, and then 5 separate individual feelings. And it's not fast one after the other. It's really all right at once. That seems like just too much.
Well, for sure, at the beginning, I thought it was impossible. That when people were telling me stories like that about their inner experience, I thought they were making it up. But then there were events that happened that made me think that they probably weren't making it up. Ashley, post-purge, had a simple inner experience, and pre-purge has a complicated inner experience. Now, either she's a really artistically inclined person who can make up some pretty wild stories on her own, which she didn't know anything about. That's possible, but it doesn't seem very likely to me. But at the very least, it means that Ashley knows the difference between one experience and multiple experiences. That this is not a language failure, that I don't understand what she's saying and she doesn't understand what I'm saying.
Ashley could describe moments that were simple, with just one or a few things in them. This made it much more believable when she described moments with dozens of things in her experience. Now, maybe we're not 100% right about all of this. Maybe some things came earlier. Maybe some things were described as separate when they were actually combined. But what is clear is that Ashley's experience was highly multiple. But this multiplicity isn't even the end of the story.
But more interesting than that was that she said that the way that these experiences would occur to her would be she would start to think about something, and then she would move on to think about something else, but instead of changing completely from topic A to topic B, she would keep topic A in mind a little bit. So she would start thinking about A, and then she'd think about B, but a little bit of A, and then she'd think about C, but a little bit of A and a little bit of B. And the metaphor that she used for that was, my experience is like an aquarium, and I got a lot of fish swimming around the aquarium, a lot of experiences going on at the same time. But quite a few of these fish are under the rocks, was her metaphor, but not entirely under the rocks. The tails were still sticking out.
Let's look at a sample with a lot of fish. This is sample number 12, and Ashley is in a tavern with 2 friends.
My friend Jill is saying,
I think he got told.
For context, it's about another friend Alan and his wife Judy and her friend telling him not to go to Newport Beach, a nearby resort. I sense an image of them telling him not to go. It's about a foot in front of me. At the same time, I sense maybe 10 to 20 simultaneous thoughts. Like before, these were not with words. If I had to put them into words, they would be something like, Alan is not making his own choices. Alan is choosing to let others make his choices. Judy is making Alan's choices, and more. I also sensed multiple feelings: irritation, anger, tolerance, and a feeling that I shouldn't be irritated or angry.
Now I said sensed because none of this was experienced directly. Not the innerly seeing Alan, not the thoughts about Alan in the resort, not the feelings. It was all somewhere outside of direct experience. It was all like the little fishy tales from under the rocks.
I quizzed her about that pretty thoroughly, and she was pretty adamant about it, that these experiences were there. She wasn't actually thinking them, but they weren't gone either. They were somewhere in between. And subsequently, I have come across other bulimic women who use different metaphors, but with sort of the same effect, as it seemed to me. Like some people would say, one woman would say, well, it's like I'm thinking thoughts, but I parked them. And another woman said, well, I've got these threads strings attached to my thoughts, and the strings are in my experience, but the thoughts themselves aren't. To my logic, when people come up with different metaphors to describe what seems to be the same thing, they got to be talking about something similar in experience, as it seems to me. If everybody was using the same metaphor, then you could say, well, that metaphor's out there, and people are just buying into that metaphor. But when people use a different metaphor to describe what seems like the same phenomenon, that catches my attention. Particularly, I would say, when the women themselves didn't know about those kinds of things before they started. So Ashley didn't know that she had these tales of experience until she started to describe her experience, and she was doing the best she could. And the woman with the threads didn't know about that aspect of her experience either until she started to describe it.
You might be thinking, okay, all of this is very interesting, but what the hell does it have to do with bulimia, with these cycles of binging and purging that these people have? So Hurlburt takes it back to Ashley.
And then it turned out that sometimes she had more of these fish under the rocks and more multiplicity of inner experience at some times. And when she had a lot of these things, she felt the urge to purge, the urge to vomit. And eventually she would indeed vomit. And when she did that, then for whatever reason, her experience got clear. So the samples afterwards didn't have a lot of fish in it, in her aquarium. And something about purging her physical self also ended up clearing up her inner experience for a while. And then the cycle would start again, maybe the next day or whenever, and then she would feel like she had to purge again. So after seeing some number of these people and becoming more or less convinced that this is a phenomenon, and the phenomenon is that inner experience of women with bulimia and nervosa is multiple, and that the more multiple it is, the more unpleasant it is, and the unpleasantness leads to purging, and the purging leads to simplification. Well, the first thing I would say about that is that is unknown in the bulimia literature. It does not say that women with bulimia and nervosa have complex inner experience, multiple inner experience. I've tried to publish in that literature. I've submitted bulimia studies to, I believe, every major eating disorder journal and been turned down all of them. And the reason they turned me down is that everybody knows that what I'm saying isn't right because nobody else is saying it, basically. But and they might be right about that. I might be mistaken about it. But I doubt it. I think other people aren't careful enough in their observations. It seems to me that it is at least worthy of consideration that the guiding principle behind bulimia is more about simplifying the mind than it is controlling the body. So that makes purging an act of mental cleanliness or something like that. But when viewed from the outside, when you can't see the mind, then people always say, well, why are you purging? And the thing that makes sense when viewed from the outside is, well, I'm trying to control my weight. But I think that might very well be a secondary thing, that the primary thing has to do with, for whatever reason, multiplicity of inner experience.
Now, some bulimic people did have more thoughts about weight and body and shape and all that, but not all of them. However, over the decades of this research with 24 different bulimic people, all of them had highly multiple experience. That ranged, depending on the person, from 38% of their samples to 100% of their samples. I'm not saying that if you are bulimic, then you have multiple experience. The point of DS is that for each person, you have to start fresh. You have to forget everything you think you know about them, about whatever diagnosis they have, and look only at them, only at their experience at specific instance. I'm also not saying that if you have highly multiple experience, then you have bulimia. There are people who have a lot of it and don't have bulimia, and bulimic people had other things going on in their experience. A lot of them had thought feelings or stuff that was between a thought and a feeling and they couldn't tell which one. And for instance, Jessica, who we saw with the Chicago sample, had lots of other different kinds of fragmented experience.
She had experience that she felt as being physically located both in the front of her mind and in the back of her mind. And a lot of people, when they say, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, a lot of people actually do think of it as being in the back of their cranium. Not everybody. For many people, that's entirely metaphorical. But the reason that metaphorical has legs, I think, is that for at least some people, they really mean it's back here. The beep that I'm remembering from her is that she had one thought that was a verbal thought that took place in concert in the front of her mind and the back of her mind. She had been watching the TV show Scrubs, and there was a skinny blonde girl that had the attention of the doctors, I guess. And she was saying to herself,
Why is it that movies and TV shows always have blonde skinny girls for guys to stare at?
but what was very interesting about that was that the words from that phrase were some in the front of her head and some in the back of her head. And so whatever that words would be, why is it that TV shows have skinny girls, whatever that phrase was. You know, she was as surprised at that as I was, and so it's hard to imagine that she's making that kind of stuff up. It would be not the kind of stuff that people would make up unless it was true, you know.
So, experience that's unclear, fragmented, highly multiple. Is there a way to sum that up?
Listening to you talk about that makes a lot of sense to me. And then I wonder if through any of your other research, you've also found similar links with other disorders or conditions. Like, my mind is just listening to this and thinking, I wonder if it's a similar but different thing with people that have very extreme anxiety, and they're all just different forms of a messy mind trying to control or cleanse, as you said, in one way or another.
Well, I think the answer to that might very well be yes. We have sampled with a bunch of different kinds of people, and I would say that people with psychiatric disorders, or whatever you want to call those things, their inner experience is not clear in some way, and that is problematic in some way. And I'm guessing if we had a mature science of inner experience, which we don't at this moment, but if we did, that it would have to do with in what ways are your inner experiences problematic for you. That would be the starting point. And then how you deal with that would be what the disorder would look like from the outside. The world divides people up into psychiatric diagnoses based on more or less badly observed external characteristics like anxiety and depression and OCD and bulimia and whatever. What I really think is that psychological science has not been careful to observe inner experience.
Diagnostic screening tests often do rely heavily on external factors, and not just for bulimia, but also for depression, ADHD, anxiety, whatever. And even when they seem to be about the mind, they demand things that Russ and I think are simply impossible, like making general averages about your experience. This often ends up looking very different from experience at any particular moment. Or they can force you to take one memory and vastly overestimate how much this kind of thought occupies your waking life. This is the saliency bias. After Mel, Russ and I sampled with Carrie, who I made some other videos about. She went to get an ADHD test.
And the entire time that I was taking the test, I was thinking about DES, because I was like, I don't know any of the answers to these questions. And this is how they're going to decide if I need medication or not.
DES tries to ignore any diagnoses people might have and focus first on them. And so results are then very different from what you find in the rest of the psychology literature and from what you find in the diagnostic criteria. And that includes for bulimia, but also for depression, for OCD, for ADHD, and for lots more. Now, DES hasn't always found clear answers and clear results for every diagnosis. Maybe there are just too few people doing it, but it has found, as Mel put it, that people with these diagnoses are in some way messy.
And if we sorted that through, then we could, maybe do a better job of having a new categorization of psychiatric disorders based on how and in what way people are messy.
Well, and a new approach to trying to make them healthier, because you tackle it in a different way by, okay, if we can try and find ways to help you find clarity inside your mind, then we might find positive outcomes with all these other symptoms, essentially.
I think that's 100% true.
Specifically for the bulimic participants, did DES find a way to help them?
The way I see my own work is I try to pay attention to what is going on in people's experience. And a lot of people find that useful. I would say most of my bulimic participants felt better about their bulimia when they were done, even though I didn't try to change it. but they would report that they seemed more under control or less frantic or whatever.
So Russ and I have had lots of debates on how to use DES to help people. He doesn't like directly trying to help people. Not that he doesn't care about them, but he thinks that to try to help someone, you have to make up theories about what kinds of experiences are good or bad, or what would be better for them. And he likes to keep DES pure and really focus on just another person's experience. I think he might be right about that. So I see a kind of dream future where DES practitioners are like the X-ray technicians of the psychology world. Like, we do this kind of deep imaging of people's minds, and then other therapists might have ideas about how to use that with their patients and to help them improve. The fact remains that many people with many different diagnoses do find DES by itself to be useful. And for some of them, it may be the first time that someone has really tried to look in depth at their inner experience.
The distinction is you got to pay attention to what is actually being experienced, not what people say about it. Because what people say about it is just not true most of the time. What people say about their own experience isn't true.
The act and art of truly identifying that experience or trying to is so challenging and time consuming. But that's so interesting that you say that across the board there was messiness to be found. Like, that assumption is such an interesting way to start things, and if that even just at early stages that assumption seems to check out, like, that's fascinating. It's quite revolutionary, to be honest. It has the power to be.
I agree. I think it would revolutionize the diagnostic model.